Hey, I'm Pastor Rhonda.
And I'm Pastor Seth.
You're listening to Growing Hope,
Living Faith. Well, finally, welcome back to Growing Hope, Living Faith podcast. And I say finally because obviously we've missed several weeks, but life
we have.
has been busy. And we're going to be talking about just several things that we've been dealing with, or not dealing with, but just going through with life. But I know one of the things that you've been working on is you are in your last class for your BA in religion at Trevecca Nazarene University. How many more weeks do you have left to go?
I have 5 weeks, and it's actually Christian ministry. But anyway, I have 5 weeks left. I'm in my last class. Week 1 is finished, but it'll get stretched out because we have a Thanksgiving break and a Christmas break. But I'm going to plow through. I'm going to try to get it done.
Yes.
I was so over school. I'm so ready to be done. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and it has been all part of my healing journey along the way. But I'm thankful for everything that I've learned and the friendships that I've made. And I see how God has worked out every class and the sequence and order. And he's just really done a great work in my heart through my experience at Trevecca. But I am so ready to have about 20 to 25 hours a week.
Yes.
I put a lot of time into it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry, Christian ministry. But it's hard too whenever you've been in a lot of religion classes and it's stuff that you desire to be engaged with, and it's not that you don't want to be desired in, or you're not like you don't desire to be in gen ed classes, but gen ed classes are just a lot tougher to just kind of fill it out because. So no, I definitely feel that. So I know you had opportunities to preach. I know you've been sick. You've had sickness going on in your family. You've been to Knoxville and back. I mean, you just been to Hiawassee, your house in Hiawassee. I know you've just been everywhere. And I know you got more songwriting stuff coming up. So anything else you want to talk about that's been going on in your life?
Well, I direct the Georgia District Ladies
Didn't even mention that.
Yeah. And so we had I'm not good with numbers. We had close to 200 registered. Some didn't come, but then others did. So I don't have my numbers right in front of me. So I would safely assume about 180 to 185 ladies came. And Mikkel Levine, she's the spiritual director of NTS, Nazarene Theological Seminary. She was our speaker, and she was amazing. And we did some different things with small groups, and we did communion in small groups. I'm also the director of our women clergy on the Georgia district. And I so enjoyed pulling the ones that I could get. I had about 12 there. That's not all of us on Georgia, but I had at least 12 there, and it was beautiful to see them in action. And I had a friend that came along with me. Again, Jen, shout out to you.
Woo-woo.
But she's never seen that many women clergy all in one place.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And the reason I wanted them to be so visible is because I know God calls women into ministry, or girls and teen girls, and they've not seen any women pastors in action. They've not really witnessed that. So I wanted them to be able to see us anointing and praying and preaching and leading communion and doing all of those things, because I think representation matters. And so anyway, we had a great time. And yeah, you're right. We've been working in Hiawassee. Eric is off work this week.
Yes.
And so he's been working on the chainsaw and cutting down trees. And so I had to go out there and help him. And he's like, here, hold this. And I was like, all this time I thought that you just hold this chainsaw and it just cuts these trees. I had no idea it was that heavy.
Yeah. Using chainsaws, it's tough work, and it's tiring work on a deep level. And well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I was surprised. He's like, here, hold this. I'm like, wow. Just kind of fell. But yeah, so that, and then
you preached a couple weeks ago. Oh man,
yes,
you're just
that. Well, I had that sermon in my back pocket.
Yeah,
and I'm still wrestling with that whole passage, and it's one of those that just stepped all over my toes, and I'm still being reminded that there are only 2 sources of wisdom, and it's from up above or not up above.
Yeah.
And the wisdom that comes, that's heavenly wisdom, is pure and it's peaceable and considerate and it's impartial and all of these beautiful things.
Yeah.
And I just have to run my not behavior, but my attitudes and my choices and all of that. Am I operating out of this kind of wisdom or the wisdom that's, selfish and, your selfish agenda and jealousy and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, the first time I preached it was at Rome and it stepped all over my toes then. And then that was the one that I had ready.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to beat myself up again.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did get some feedback that it spoke to some other people too. Yeah. And I said, well, let's just all get this together and try to, to stay aware of how am I operating in life. So,
for sure. So, well, that's awesome. What you were going to say something else? Oh, I butted in on you with the preaching thing. You were going to talk about something else.
I don't remember. It might have been songwriting because I am so excited about that. That's next week, next Thursday through Sunday. And
where's this one at?
Yeah, this one's in Clayton. This is the same group of people we met in Iowa back in the spring, and now we're in Clayton, Georgia, which is only 30 minutes from my house up there. So we're going to go back and forth. And but yeah, I am ready for a retreat, and I'm ready to be with, we call them my people.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is my people. We're weird. Songwriters are very odd and unusual people. We wear feelings on our sleeves, and we have a third eye that we, we read into stories or we hear something, and we're like, oh, that could be a song. So, we're odd in that way, but it's nice to be with your odd friends.
Yeah. Like-minded people,
what's
for sure.
been going on with you?
Yeah, I don't know. Just kind of, I feel like it's just been same old, and almost. But we're doing some rearranging in our house, and we're getting ready to do some work. So trying to prep our hearts and minds for that. So we got a wall that we're going to take out of our house. So that's always be a good time. And I think we're gonna do that after the new year, actually. So, but yeah, so I'm kind of been doing that, just painting in our room and painting in our bedroom. We got some family coming in town this week, so we're excited about that. And
good.
Yeah.
Your family or
Morgan's family? Yep. So Morgan's family, they're coming in, and my mother-in-law's birthday is on Friday. And then this Saturday night, we're going up to see the lights at Rock City. So we always try to do that every year, at least take the kids up there. So yeah, gonna do that and just kind of hang out. I'm gonna smoke some food on Saturday. We're gonna smoke some ribs and a pork butt, do some pulled pork, and so looking forward to that. Always gonna be a good time. And so just that kind of stuff going on in our life. When Morgan and the kids are in school, it's pretty mundane for us as a whole. Mm-hmm. Our weeks look a lot alike, kind of from week to week. It's very much a routine, and so we did actually get our daughter into gymnastics, so that was fun. Her first night was last night, and she loved it, absolutely loved it. The only problem was the only time they had available was like 7:15 into 8:10. It's all the way in Ottawa, which same place Jordan and them go. It's all the way up there.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a late night. So last night was the first night that she went, and it was kind of a struggle coming home. She was crying some, and then this morning was a struggle. So hopefully we'll be able to figure out, and as we do a couple more weeks, she'll kind of fall into just, I guess, doing better with that. But yeah, so like life's busy, but at the same time, It's the same old. Almost feels like Groundhog Day sometimes. The day, week in and week out, just doing the same old. So,
but that's the beauty of the life with Jesus, because I think sometimes we try to get on those mountaintops. We wait for the Lord. And we live for those experiences, and they're few and far between. But He is faithful to meet us in the everyday, mundane, common things of life when we invite him, and we stay aware of his presence, and we know that he is there to help us get through those things, but just to, have company with us.
Yep.
He will meet us in those moments, and we don't have to wait for some big exciting encounter, because life is not always exciting. It's ordinary, and he meets us in the ordinary.
It's good. 100%. And, so like this last Sunday, you were gone on retreat. And so we led music at the church because there wasn't anybody else to do it. And so it's been a while since we have done that. And so just as much as, like you said, like God meets us in the ordinary, finding those little times in the ordinary to push and challenge yourself, I think goes really a long way as well. And it's also on awesome opportunities to really, I think, see God move and God work, both in your life and, in your family's life. And so, you're 100% right that he does work. I think in the ordinary. I'm thankful that we serve a God who works in the ordinary, and he's so faithful in the ordinary, and he's also faithful, like I said, I think, as we continue to try to push ourselves and challenge ourselves. And I think that really kind of flows into the story of today for the lectionary, essentially, that we're going to be looking at. Is
it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, the story of Hannah, and that comes out of 1 Samuel. Such a cool story, an odd story, to some degree. I think there's some oddness in it, but it really is a cool story. Do you want me to read it? Do you want to read it? I don't care.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'll read it. This is going to come from 1 Samuel, chapter 1, looking at verse 4. It says, "On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. Her rival used to provoke her severely to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. Her husband, Elkanah, said to her, 'Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?' And they had eaten and drunk at Shiloh. Hannah rose and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she made this vow, 'O Lord of hosts, if only you will look on the misery of your servant, remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a male child, then I will set him before you as a Nazarite until the day of his death. He shall drink neither wine nor intoxicants, and nor a razor shall touch his head.' As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying silently. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. And so Eli said to her, 'How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Put away your wine.' But Hannah answered, 'No, my Lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation all this time.' And then Eli answered, 'Go in peace. The God of Israel grant the petition you have made to him.' And she said, 'Let your servant find favor in your sight.' And then the woman went her way and ate and drank with her husband, and her countenance was sad no longer. They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord. Then they went back to their house at Ramah. Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. In due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, 'I have asked him of the Lord.'"
Wow. Such a story. And you've got to have some kind of cultural background, because there's so much in the story that makes me cringe.
Yeah.
The first part, where it talks about his other wife. Sorry, I'm coughing little lingering bits of COVID.
No worries.
But anyway, it's like this other wife is just being so obnoxious and is trying to provoke Hannah, and then, and this is the other thing that annoys me about this part, is because her husband is like, "Oh, come on, you're crying for a kid. You know, am I not better, than all of these sons?" And, I just want to slap him, I'm like, no, it's not the same. But on a much serious note, in that time, the priests, Eli, there was a lot of things that's not in this passage, but a lot was going on. There was a lot of just turmoil, and with his sons, and just a lot of corruption in the temple. But here we have this woman, and he sees her.
Yeah.
But I love that it says that she is pouring out her soul, because in those days, to not have a son to take care of it was a much different scenario. So if we don't understand that cultural context, this story is very odd. But anyway, she is praying and she's weeping bitterly. And I noticed in this that she is so upset. She's not even eating.
Yeah.
She is beyond upset, and she's pouring out her heart. And it's interesting to me that she's not saying it out loud. If she just, she doesn't want anybody else to know what she's praying for. It's just one of those, but she knows God knows her heart, and she prays. It says only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. So Eli just assumed that she's drunk. Anyway, I'm rambling. What are your thoughts?
No, absolutely. Like I said, there is just a lot of cringiness in this passage as a whole. Obviously this is a patriarchal society on a very deep level. And so, like you said, that goes back to the male figure, having a male figure in the household. The male is the one that provided, the one that brought power to the family, the one that brought, I guess, back in that day, that brought stability, unfortunately, to the family. So like you said, I think it's very important to realize that cultural reality. Just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean that that's the same way that we should operate now. And I'm thankful that we live in a day and age. And I'm thankful that Jesus comes on the scene. And although he's very much in a patriarchal society, he really kind of begins to bust through the norms on a very deep level. And even early on in the church, I think they bust through those norms to where, there's tradition and history says that the early church, they ordained women. They allowed women to preach and to teach and to do all of those kind of things. And so I'm thankful that the church decided to step aside from those things and say, no, we believe in women just as much as we believe in men. We believe in the call of women, the abilities of women. And so, I think that's it's very, very important to have that understanding. But the reality, too, is Elkanah, he was not helping Hannah at all, right? Because he was giving these portions to his wives and sons, but he would give Hannah a double portion because he loved her so much. And so essentially, the patriarch within the family is setting one of his wives up for failure from the very beginning, because what is going to be the response of the other wives and the kids? Of course they're going to be upset. Like, of course they're going to be mad. Of course they're not going to understand, and they're going to have resentment, and they're going to have hate, and they're going to have all of these things. And so essentially I think that's where his other wife is coming from. And Elkanah has essentially, or however you say his name, Elkanah, or whatever you want to say, has set his family up for failure on such a deep level. And I can't imagine the reality, because in the text it says year after year after year after year that this happens and this goes on. And like I said, maybe Elkanah thought that he was doing the right thing by, she can't have a kid, so maybe we're going to try to bless her more. We're going to try to give her more because she can't. It's like I said, it's hard to put it all on, I guess, him. But the reality is year after year after year that she's going through this struggle, and year after year after year she's having to hear from this other wife who is almost, I guess, tormenting her to the reality that she is barren. It's reminding her of her brokenness, reminding her of her lack of life almost, right? Like you said, this is not to be able to bear a child, not to be able to have a male, is essentially synonymous with life. And so she's reminded year after year, almost day after day, that she is no life giver. And I think that this is very much a story that as we peel back the layers, it's so easy to bring it to today once we begin to kind of peel those layers back. Because I think we all go through times in life. We all have struggles in life. Sometimes people set us up for failure on a deep level, and that's hard to try to think about, and it's hard to try to put, to wrestle with on a deep level. But then we have to go through that sometimes year after year. There's something we desire. There's something that we want. There's something that we feel like might make us whole, but for some reason it just seems to be out of reach. And so year after year after year, the struggle is real, like time after time after time. And the question is what's going to really be our response? And I think Hannah's response is a beautiful response for sure.
It is, because she goes to the Lord in prayer and she's completely honest. I mean, she is it says she's pouring out her soul before the Lord. It says, I am a woman deeply troubled. I am not drunk, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. And then it says, don't regard your servant as worthless. I've been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation at this time. So in other words, she's being honest. She's pouring out and not holding back in telling God her need. And we can only imagine, because it doesn't say her exact words she was saying to God. But I mean, she's pouring out because of this situation, to stop the tormenting. And I can just imagine her saying, get her to shut up, And, I can just see how she would be asking for relief from that. And then, of course, the child is, is a no-brainer. But I love that it says that where'd it go? Something, I can't find it. Let's see. Oh, where is it? Something about her countenance had changed. It's got to be around there.
Yeah, it's at the very end. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then she went and so it says, let your servant find favor in your sight. Then the woman went her way. In other words, she left and she ate and drank with her husband. Yeah. In other words, she wiped her tears. She took a deep breath. She experienced some peace to some level, and her countenance was no longer sad. Yeah. So in other words, she, believed what the priest had said to her, and she took that and it brought her peace, and she knew she had laid it all down with God, and she had poured out her heart, and then she could walk away this time and be sad no longer. It says, then they rose early in the morning and they worshiped before the Lord. Then they went back home. And then, of course, Hannah conceives. This whole story, though, because, she's promising, if you'll just answer this, I promise I'm going to give this child back to you. He'll be Nazarite. He will do. Of course, there's, I don't think it was in this passage, but Hannah vows to give this child back to God. Right. And God used him so mightily. I love this whole portion of the Old Testament, because we get in from here to Saul to David. Right. But yeah, I mean, she did exactly what she promised, and I love her response is really that next chapter. When she responds, because chapter 1, verse 20 leaves it as, she conceives and she bore a son. She named him Samuel. And then you go on into that, and then now she's just praising and worshiping. And I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great. I do struggle sometimes with putting God to the test. I feel like sometimes, I think we got to be very careful sometimes within that. I'm not saying that that's essentially what Hannah was doing. I think it was just that reassurance to God of God, I want you to bless me, but believe me, I'm going to try to bless you with my life, and that which you give me is going to be yours. I think some people could read that and say, oh, well, that was a challenge to God. And it was like, oh, if you do this for me, then I'll do this for you. But I don't think that's essentially what was going on within this passage. But I think what's the other beautiful reality of this passage is, essentially Eli could have made that promise to her. She could have gone home and she could have done nothing and the promise would not have been fulfilled. If you think about that reality,
Right.
because I think in verse 19, it really is that important part where it says Elkanah knew his wife. And if you know the Hebrew language or the Hebrew way at all, essentially what that means is they slept together, right? Like Hannah and Elkanah, that they slept together. He knew her. They had sex, whatever you want to say. That there is this personal responsibility, essentially, that, you know, if she has this desire, she had this these things that she wanted, and she prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for these things. Essentially, Eli brings peace into her life, but her truth or her part didn't end there. Does that kind of make sense?
Right.
Like, she had to go and actively continue to pursue that peace, like continue to pursue that
Right.
reality. Right. It's beautiful that our countenance does change, that, you know, we get these promises and our countenance can change and we can move forward, but we've got to continue to push. We've got to continue to live the life. We've got to continue to do the things to bring about what we believe are the things that maybe we desire, that hopefully God desires for our life as well. And so to me, that's just a beautiful reality. And a beautiful picture here is Hannah was faithful in going and presenting her desires before the Lord. But it didn't stop there. You know, once the promise was given, then she continued to be faithful. And then, like you said, it just flows into this reality, a beautiful reality of praise, where Hannah exalts God, and just gives praise and thanks for Samuel and for who he is. And once again, I think it just proves the reality of where Hannah was coming from, on such a deep level, as not as a person that's coming of all right, God, if you do this, then I'll do this, and laying out the fleece and all that kind of stuff. But it really was this pure heart that she was coming with, in the reality that there was this desire, there was this struggle, there was this, I won't say it's an enemy. I mean, essentially the reality of Scripture, it does talk about a rival, you know, calls the other wife a rival, but there's this struggle that is on my back, and year after year after year, I have dealt with this year after year after year. And there's just this beautiful reality of the promise of God. And as the promise of God moves, even in the midst of what God gives her, she continually gives that back to God. So it's a really, really cool story on such a deep level. A lot of oddities, like you said, the whole drunken wine thing is really, really funny on a deep level. I could see pastors kind of having some of those thought processes even, you know, nowadays. But I think it calls us back to, what are we going to do in the midst of struggle? What are we going to do when times are hard, when times are difficult, when you feel like your rival or enemy or whatever is just on you year after year, day after day? What are you going to do? Are you going to turn to God? Or sometimes it's easier to turn away from God and to try to turn to other things
and blame God.
Yeah, and turn to other things that you feel like might give you the answers that you want or get you to places that you want. But are we going to be like Hannah, or are we going to turn to our own vices and try to get the things that we want, how we desire to get them, or things that in a way that we think will be faster, more beneficial to us?
Right. And then I can't help but think of Sarah, you know, and Abraham, because, you know, the promise, of course, you know, Hannah didn't have the promise yet, but, you know, that's what Sarah wanted. And she was willing to scheme and to, you know, do her own thing to try to make that happen. So, you know, then we have the issue with her servant, you know, giving her servant to her husband and that kind of thing. But I love in this particular story, that she does go to God, and she goes to him with the desires of her heart instead of trying to, of course, we don't know her whole story. This just might be a snapshot of when she was getting things right. But you know, this does portray that she was doing the right thing, that she was going straight to God in prayer. And I can't help but think of what peace we often forfeit. I think I throw that out a lot, but the first thing that comes to my mind is sometimes prayer is the last thing. It's our last resort. But, you know, too, things were so much different in the Old Testament. Like now we can just pray, like right now, you know, when I go to bed, I can get on but for their, in this Old Testament, way. It was like making this trip,
Yeah.
To go in to pray, but it was like a once a year thing. It
Right.
wasn't like she has like this open access to Jesus, come before the throne,
Yeah.
find the grace and mercy that you need. It was a totally different system. But yet, I wonder how heavy her steps were getting there, because again, I guess it was partly she probably dreaded it because year after year she went through this torment and this ridicule and this kind of thing, but also she knew she was getting to a place that she could position herself in prayer and pray.
Yeah. So good. I'm not going to get political, but if you think about just a lot of the things that have been going on in the world that we live in, especially here in America, it's easy, I think, if we're not careful. I mean, I think this story really could speak into the situation, especially in the church. We live in a day and age, unfortunately, where politics has invaded the church on such a deep level, and it's really become an identity of the church. And a lot of times, depending on what church you attend or that you call yourself to be a part of, very much defines where your political allegiance and different things have to stand. And I think the beautiful thing about following Jesus is I don't think you have to be a Republican. I don't think you have to be a Democrat. I think you can be a Democrat and a Republican and follow Jesus. And so I think, a lot of people in the church, I think there's people on both sides who are struggling with the reality of, I think some people are struggling with what happened. And then I think there are other people who are very excited and happy with what happened. And I think the call of this passage is that reminder of, first off, we don't want to be the rival wife who is in a position where we have the opportunity or we have what we want. And when we look at others who don't have what they want, it's so easy to be that rival and to beat people down and to be the person who lords it over people. And then I think there's going to be people who are just like Hannah, who are struggling right now and who are crying out to God because they have fears and they have different things that are going on based off of this. And,
for the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think it's, I don't think if you're whichever camp you might be in, I don't think it's wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think, whatever. But I think the reality is maybe for all of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus is we got to remember the story of Hannah and the reality of, how would this story have been different if the rival would have been someone who was constantly seeking the face of God in all things? Not to say that would change their outcomes of things that, they did, but what would that look like if there was more humility in coming to the reality of God first? And so, like I said, I don't like politics on a very deep level. And I know I'm being pretty vague in a lot of this kind of conversation, but I think this should speak to all of us because the reality is we should die to the cross and we die to Jesus before we die to any political party that we might call ourselves a part of. And in the church should be a place where all people are welcomed, even if they don't think like us, they don't look like us, they don't talk like us or whatever. And so I believe that this story can really, if we allow ourselves to be placed into the story of Hannah and the rival and Elkanah, because like I said, sometimes we are setting people up for failure. I think even in the common reality of the day that we live. So, like, how can we bring this story forward, not to proof text it, but I think it fits in the reality of the context that we're in right now? And how can we as the church be a people who say, you know what, we're going to be like Hannah in all things. It doesn't matter if we're on this side or this side. We're going to continue to seek the face of God, that God's going to move and that God's going to work. And even though others may be in struggle, we're going to be like Eli, who's going to bless people and breathe life into people and breathe peace into people. And so, like I said, that ramble may be crazy and I may end up taking all of this out of the podcast anyways. But I think it's so important for us to hear, and it's so important for the church to to hear in this day and age, in such a time where division is so prevalent. Man, the church should be a force that draws people together, even and definitely in a world that is trying to draw people apart.
And I do think we have to pay attention in the story of how God is working. I'm not saying he's not working through her husband or the other wife or Eli or anybody else. But you see the story is God is with the brokenhearted.
Yeah.
He is close to those who are crushed in spirit.
Yeah.
He's close to those that are on the margins. And I think that's very important for us. We want to know where God is. We need to look in those places where God is moving. That's where we need to gravitate towards the people that are vulnerable and the people that are hurting and the people that are oppressed, and that's what was happening here, in this ridicule and everything. And I think that's another good lesson for us today. That's where God's moving. You see that in the life of Jesus. Jesus could be anywhere, but where was he? He's out. While a feast is going on in Jerusalem, he's out, or I guess it was Jerusalem. I can't remember. This is late at night, but there's a celebration going on, and he is wandering around the pool, healing and talking to people. So my point is, in this story, we see God's activity where he is binding up the wounds of this broken lady in her brokenness, and it's very important that. And like you said, Eli blessed her. Yeah. And I think he could have very well made fun of her and sent her way.
Which he did in the beginning. He did.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And then when she vocalized, what he came around. But I think it's important to look to the marginalized and to the oppressed and those who are hurting, because God's going to be at work. Very holy spaces right there.
Yep. 100%. And we don't define people by their political allegiance. We define them by the reality of the one who lives in them, or the one that we should see within them. And that's the beauty of Jesus. And man, if I could have any encouragement for the church, that would be the reality. And it's the church that I long to see and I desire to see on such a deep level. And it's possible on such a deep level. Man, may it be so. So we've been going on about a little over 37 minutes, so we probably need to wrap up. But like I said, I'm thankful to have this conversation. Thankful to be able to sit down, catch back up with you a little bit. Because we haven't really got to see each other a whole lot over these last couple of weeks. I know you guys probably think that we're always hanging out and doing all that, but no, we haven't even got to see each other a whole lot over these last couple of weeks. So it's good to catch back up, and probably won't have one out next week, but then hopefully once you're done with school, it's going to be a little bit more consistent. And my weekly schedule is kind of changing up a little bit, but hopefully we'll be able to figure out a night and just make it happen, which would be good. So
right.
We do love you.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. 100%. So know that we do love you all, and pray and hope that you've gotten something out of this conversation, for sure. Hannah's such a cool story. Know that we love you. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, or whatever, you'd like to reach out to us, we do have email. It's growinghopelivingfaith@gmail.com. And we also have Facebook.
We do have a Facebook page. It's Growing Hope Living Faith Podcast. And we would love for you to message us, DM us there, or leave us comments. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And we just pray God's blessings for you and your family.
That's right. So once again, thank you so much for listening. God bless. I don't even remember how I end this. That's how long this has been. We love you all. Grace and peace. God bless. Bye-bye.